Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Joppy Noodle Legs here today with another Noodle film review. Today we're looking at 1986 slasher, The Zero Boys. This is an Arrow release of the film and it comes with a Blu-ray, DVD and the booklet of the film. So this is like the first edition of the movie. Now this is a bit of a different slasher. It's not your average sort of slasher film. The film starts off in like we're seeing like it's like an old deserted sort of desert kind of town, and there doesn't appear to be anyone there. But then out of the buildings we see these sort of Rambo-like sort of don't know, that not soldiers, but we see these sort of like Rambo-like people running around with guns. And then the film turns into like sort of some sort of shootouts going on between these Rambo-likes and these people dressed in like German SS outfits. So this sort of gives you okay, this is a bit different than the normal. So we see that they're all trying to outthink each other and outsmart each other, and sort of like shooting each other off top of roofs. And then there was one Rambo one that sort of like really thinks he's Rambo, sort of shooting one of these sort of guys. And what it turns out to be in the end is a massive paintball fight between two teams, and the Rambo team are the Zero Boys. So the three buddies. Anyway, they win this paintball fight and they win the bet. And a part of the prize of the bet, as well as money, was the other guy's team's girlfriend was to go and join them. So she's very reluctant, like being a prize, and sort of punches him and knocks him out. Anyway, she decides to, after a conversation with our Rambo, she decides to go with him. Because, you know, she thinks, well, I might as well. So she goes off with them, off into their sort of Jeep, and they sort of drive away from this warriors sort of survival camp. And then we join them back in sort of like the main sort of town out there, sort of high school sort of dorms, or really. And someone's sitting in the Jeep and they're waiting for others to come out and join them. And the girl's still with them, she still joins them. And then they go off. They go off on like a drive, and we hear this sort of like 1980s kind of music, and they're all sort of joking about and sort of like laughing. It really reminded me of the scene in The Mutilator, when they go off to the beach hut. This is pretty much similar to that. This film's not too different, really. So they go off into the countryside and have like this picnic. So they're all having a sort of picnic and a chat and a laugh and all this. And one of the girls goes to our Rambo, why don't you go and talk to the girl? You know, get to know her. So he goes over to her and starts talking to her by the car, and she starts telling her about herself, about being 18 and a pathology sort of student and all this kind of thing. And then they hear like a scream coming from, they don't know where, in the woods somewhere. So that sort of startles them, and they all sort of sit up thinking, where's that come from? But they're not sure, so they all decide to go looking for her, but they all get in the Jeep. How are you going to find someone in the Jeep? Anyway, they all drive off in the Jeep, and they start looking, and the girl that's joined them swears she sees a girl running for the woods. So her and Rambo go out running through the woods to sort of like look to see if they can see this girl. And they can't see her nowhere, but they sort of run into like a thorn, like a pine sort of tree, and some of the pine sort of leaves are covered in blood. And she goes, yeah, I swear I saw a girl. And then they see a house in the background. And so they decide then to drive over to the house, all of them. So we see them outside the house, sort of slowly, sort of approaching this house. Again, it's a typical American sort of horror house, sort of like white wooden panelled, in the middle of nowhere. It's typical, sort of very Friday the 13th sort of like setup. So they go into the house and it's empty. So they're having a look around, turn on the lights and look around, and you see a sort of shot down on them from above, and they're like they can't see anyone there. So they decide to settle in there for the night. Bit strange, you know. I don't know. That just wouldn't happen here in the UK. But they just settle in for the night and they start chatting, and a couple of them go up to the bedrooms, as you know, like the Friday the 13th sort of thing. And the young girl that's joined them is still sort of chatting with our Rambo. We join them out on the porch, and they sort of like having a chat, and then they have a kiss and all this sort of stuff. Then one of the girls goes out to the car because it's one of the guys' birthday. She's gone out there to sneak in the cake, but while she's out there, she hears a noise coming from the bushes area, and so she keeps looking back, and she can't see anything. And then she hears another noise, and she stops and turns around again and says hello, but she can't see nothing. So she wanders back into the house, doesn't say anything to anyone else. She just wanders back into the house. And they sort of celebrate this guy with a birthday, giving him a birthday cake, singing happy birthday. So it's a nice little scene. Again, a typical sort of little horror setup there. It's brilliant. I love that sort of thing. And he blows out his candles and spits all over it while he's doing it. But while this is all going on, there's someone outside watching them. So you get to see like the heavy breathing and someone outside sort of thing watching them through the window. Then we see a couple up in stairs getting it on, and while they're sort of like doing it, one of the girls looks up and she sees a sort of hole in the ceiling and an eye looking down, looking through. So that startles her and she stops, and the guy gets the ump and he goes, what's going on? He goes, well, I've just seen someone looking through the hole up there. So he has a look because there's no one there. But that's ended their sort of moment. So they come downstairs with the ump. So they've all got the ump pretty much at this stage. So they decide, I'll tell you what, let's drive into town where there's some noise and music. So they all decide they're going to go and drive into town. And when they get in, they'll leave the hut, apart from the girl that's got the ump. She's still sitting on the sofa. And they get in the car and ready to go, and the car won't start. Typical. So, again, Rambo tries to fix the car and he can't. And the girl, while this is doing, the girl that's there with Rambo, looks over at the woods and she sees this figure behind a tree with harnessing a really big knife. She calls him over, said, look. And of course, by the time he gets over there, there's no one there. And then it starts to chuck it down with rain, and they go back into the hut. And then the film turns into your 1980s slasher, where they all get sort of picked off one by one. But it's a bit different this time because they're not as easy as a normal sort of slasher, because these guys are quite survival warriors, isn't they? Because they're doing all this paintball, so they've got a pretty good idea of looking after themselves. So it's not as easy for the killer to take them down. And this killer in the film, he sort of like likes to torture the ones he catches as well. So this is like a sort of prequel to a pre-series to like the Hostel or Saw, where he likes to sort of torture them and stuff like that. But that's all I'm going to tell you. It's a very unexpected, underrated slasher movie. So what do I think of the Zero Boys, not the Lost Boys? Zero Boys. I thought it was really, really awesome. Absolutely loved the movie. Absolutely, really different, but really cliched and very, very cool. The pluses of this, the transfer looks amazing. Absolutely stunning transfer. Looks really cool. The acting is very, very slasher camp sort of acting, which is great. And the sort of Rambo thing going on is like a different sort of added dimension, which it works. Which shockingly you think, how can that sort of work? You've got these guys like these action sort of film, and it turned it into a slasher, but it works. The story's got a quite good premise. It is different. It is a little bit different, although very samey. It is like a mixture of The Mutilator mixed with Friday the 13th. But it's absolutely brilliant. Minus is it's not as gory as a lot of the 80s sort of slashers, but and it's not a big sort of like death count, it's like a lot of the slashers in the 80s, but it doesn't take it away from being an absolute unique slasher movie. It's really, really cool and it is totally unique, not like any of the others. So I'm going to score this excellent watch and give it an 8 out of 10. Really cool film. I'm so glad to pick this up and have this in my collection. I know if I watch this 3 or 4 times and with the commentaries, it's going to turn into one of my favourites. I just know it is. And it will end up being a 9 or a 10 out of 10. But at the moment, it sits at an 8 out of 10 for me. Zero Boys, 8 out of 10. Any of you guys seen it? If you have, let me know down below what you thought of it. I believe it's out of print now. I'm not quite sure. Actually, I think Arrow might have it in their sale. You go over to their website and have a look. But it's going to be one of those that's going to go out of print, I think. Which is a shame because it's a really cool film. Absolutely enjoyed it. Really well shot. Shot like a typical... At the beginning, you think, what's this? What sort of film is this? It's like really strange, like an action-packed sort of like shootout. And you're just thinking all these people dressed like Rambo and stuff. It's really strange. And then it turns into and looks like an amazing sort of typical slasher. And it plays out really, really well. Really cool. Absolutely love the film. Guys, till my next review, please check out some horror channels for me. Check out Horror Hands, Horror Geek, Manby Film, RS Designs, Pizzlewell, I Am the Ice Lord, Cat Watches Horror, Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House, and of course Sarah of Horror. Till next time, you look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I see you all soon.